Okay, I want to talk about the junk drawer. It's probably one of the smallest areas in your house, but it's probably one of the most difficult areas to actually declutter. And when I first moved into my apartment, my townhome, I that's one of the first things I established. Even though I was decluttering somewhat, it wasn't until a couple years later that I went full force. But um, one of the first things I established in my kitchen was I set aside one drawer to, that's where I had my screwdrivers and screws and nails and duct tape and glues and things like that. So I set aside, that was one of the first things I did in my kitchen. And that is a result of my childhood, because my dad was born in 1926 and my mom in 1937. So probably more so my dad than my mom. But around the house, you had to have a place to collect little items, little things like screwdrivers and screws and nails, things like that. And so my parents actually had two. So you have to understand, my dad grew up in a time when, it was right around the Great Depression. We were headed into World War II. And so you kept things. Families kept things. They never wasted anything. They never threw anything away. So my dad grew up around that. And they weren't poor. They weren't rich, but they weren't poor. They had food. They had clothing. They had fun times. They would make ice cream in a time that they would have to drive 30 miles to get a block of ice. I can remember my dad telling stories of that. And when I talk about driving 30 miles, there was no interstate. So it was on a 2-lane road. So you really had to be dedicated to making ice cream. But they would do that on Sundays, and they would have games out in the yard and invite family over. So there was a lot of things. Now, my mom was more out of a necessity, because she didn't have a whole lot growing up. And so you learn to make do with what you have, and definitely don't waste anything. Well, at our house growing up, there were two places. They had a drawer. My mom had this old sideboard. It was a huge piece of furniture, and it had endless cabinets and drawers. And in one of them, that's where they kept the screwdrivers and batteries and just anything. If they would make something, buy it at the store, and it came with screws, and they would have an extra screw over, it would go into the junk drawer. And they also had what they called the catchall. And the catchall was a medium-sized basket, and it was kept in our boot closet. Obviously, a closet where we kept all of our boots. And which that closet was endless in itself. But that's where the catch-all, the basket, was kept, and nothing was thrown away. And they were very good about not buying unnecessary things and making do with what they had. But so I grew up in an era where, you must have a junk drawer. Okay, we'll call it exactly what it is, a junk drawer. But the difference between my junk drawer and my parents' junk drawer and catch-all basket was they actually used it, because I can remember a lot of times mom would be looking for something and dad would be like, well, did you check the catch-all? And the catch-all was where they had the extra screws and nails and things like that. And I can remember my mom going into it many times. Oh, there it is, and, oh, that's exactly what I need. So those got used a lot. So mine not necessarily. So I remember when I decided, okay, I'm not going to have a junk drawer anymore, a catch-all. And so I cleaned it out. So I did. It's very hard for me to throw away screws and nails. So, but I did put the screws and the nails in this toolbox that I had. So I did keep them. The duct tape, it wasn't very much, so I ended up throwing it away, and there were receipts, and it was just junk. So anything that was definitely junk, I threw away. So I don't have a junk drawer anymore. I have a toolbox that houses all that, the screwdrivers, and but I can remember probably about 6 months ago, and I use box cutters for my work. I have to open up boxes, so. And I can remember my box cutter broke, and how it broke was I was using it one time, and I was like, it was kind of loose, and I was like, oh, the screw's missing. I lost the screw, and I don't know how I did that. I thought it was secure on there, but so I was like, oh, no problem, because I had just replaced this probably 3 months before that with another box cutter I had that had completely broke. So they were only $2, so they weren't a total loss. So I said, I know I have the screw somewhere at home, because I never throw away screws. So I think I even said that to a coworker. It's like, well, I never throw away screws. So I went, and the obvious place would have been to look in the junk drawer, but I didn't have that anymore. So I looked in the toolbox, and we actually have 2 toolboxes that just regular carry toolboxes, and one is mine and one belongs to my daughter, because I think it's important for her to have a toolbox and to be comfortable using tools. But I couldn't find the right size screw, and I just thought long and hard, I can't believe I threw away that screw. I knew I threw away the actual box cutter, but I really thought I kept the screw. And so I was a little upset with that. So going through the years, everything that I have discarded, donated, gave away, 99% of what I've given away or trashed, I've not regretted. I've not regretted at all. The 1% would have been a book that I wanted to reread, and I thought I was done with it, so I ended up actually getting on Amazon and buying the book again. So that is a book I'll keep, by the way. And then the other thing is that screw. I was like, I must have thrown away the screw, but I can't believe I threw away a screw, and it just really bothered me. And so I did set aside the box cutter. I was like, oh well, and then about a week later, that same coworker came up to me, and his box cutter had broke, and he was going to throw it away, but he kept the screw, and he's like, do you think this screw will fit your box cutter? And I was like, hey, yeah, and it's not like, I did try to go to the store to look for a certain type of screw. It had to have a fat head on it, and but be short, and I couldn't find that. So for some reason I did keep the box cutters. And so anyway, his box cutter was similar to mine. So I took the screw, I took it home and screwed it in. It worked fine. So crisis averted right there. But it still bothered me because I threw away a screw. I mean, how stupid is that, right? I threw away a screw. So just about a week ago, and I don't have a lot of clutter in my kitchen, my counters, I don't have a lot of counter space. And so all I have is a toaster and coffee maker on my counter, and then I have a flour container and sugar container, and then my oat container. But they're relatively small. So I don't really have a whole lot on my counters. But I do have this utensil because I had one drawer that did break, and that's where I kept my utensils. So I had to get one of those plastic containers, small, that had like 3 mini drawers in it, and that's where I kept my utensils. And so the other day I was cleaning off the top, which it didn't have very many things. It had some toothpicks, and I can't even think of what else it had. It was very minor. And so I was cleaning it off, and I found the screw, and I can't believe I put the screw there. But it was the screw. So it went in my toolbox. So, but other than that, I've not missed my junk drawer. But I think that was something that I had learned, I had carried through with my parents. You don't throw away things. So I do keep the screws and the nails, but I do have a place in my toolbox for it. So we have to watch collecting things that we think we might need in the future. Screws and nails are relatively small. They don't take up a lot of space. But then you have other things. You have bottles. I like spices, and the spices I buy come in these glass bottles. So when they are done, I have a tendency, because they're kind of cute too, but I have a tendency to wash them up and save them. And I had a collection of like 4 of them, and which maybe it's not that much of a collection and it's not that much of a big deal, but I probably have at least 10 more spices in the cabinet that are made up of these glass jars. So it could potentially be a big deal. And why was I saving them? I was like, oh, because when I grow my spice and I'll dry it out and then I'll put them in the bottles, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that. So I had to throw away those bottles, but that was just the other day. But you have to get out of the mentality, at least I had to get out of the mentality, saving it for a rainy day, oh my gosh, you never know, I might need this, and I might need that, and it can accumulate. So it can start out with something small and then get bigger and bigger. And I still find myself thinking that, there's a box. There's always a joke about, people that don't throw away the iPhone box. And years ago, I had an iPhone. I don't anymore, but I had an iPhone. And on my top closet was the iPhone box. And I don't know why I kept it. I don't know why. But, you have shoe boxes you keep, because you never know, or you have another thing that I have to watch is, a long time ago, I had learned from someone that the bags that the cereal comes in, my daughter eats cereal. I don't necessarily eat it, but my daughter does. In those wax type baggies that the cereal comes in, that you can save them and use them to wrap. Like if you're going to freeze meat, you can wrap them. And usually when I freeze meat, I'll do like a triple layer. I'll do plastic wrap, then I'll do that. I'll use those bags, I'll break them open and then wrap them. And then I put them in a Ziploc baggie, some type of thing like that. And, I do that obviously to protect it from freezer burn. But you have to watch, because I don't freeze a lot of meat. So they can accumulate. And at one point, I probably had 30 of those bags, and I don't need 30 of those bags. So, even the smallest stuff. And so you have to ask yourself, how hard would it be to replace the item? If you get rid of it, donate it, give it away, throw it away, whatever your method is, how hard would it be to replace the item? So you have to get into that mentality. If you absolutely need it down the road, or you think you're going to need it, how hard would it be to replace it? And then you just kind of, when you start getting rid of the small stuff, then you kind of think that there's really actually a lot that you don't need, that you're just saving for a rainy day, and that rainy day never comes. So, watch the potential junk drawers, the catch-alls. The catch-all term might be a West Virginia thing, I don't know. But have a place for it. Have a little container for your screws, your nails. If you're one that doesn't save that stuff, then you're lucky. I don't know that I would ever get to the point where I would throw away a screw. But watch what you accumulate, Watch those cute little bottles, the cute little boxes, the little baggies that, if, I use for meat or frozen items. And the containers. Now, containers. One thing that my mom did, that probably everyone in her generation did, that I never did, never had an interest to do, was those plastic containers that butter comes in, cottage cheese, things like that. She would save it. She would save every container. My mom even had the Solo cups, and I don't use Solo cups. We use glasses, but those Solo cups that, plastic cups that are meant for throwaway at picnics or whatever. And she would wash them, and I would be like, but Mom, you're defeating the purpose, But it was very hard for her to throw away things. Now, that being said, I keep saying that I think that they were the ultimate minimalists, because they didn't have a lot of stuff around, but they didn't waste anything either. So throwing away something like that could be reused was wasteful to them. But we kind of have to get out of that mentality. And, for plastic cups, instead of buying them, I don't use paper plates. I don't use plastic cups. We use paper towels for like napkins, but to clean with and stuff, I have rags I use. So look for, if you're going to save items, then try to get in the habit of actually using them. it's small steps. It's small steps. And when I had moved to my townhome, I was getting rid of things before I moved. You know, I was getting rid of a lot of things. I didn't get rid of things I should have, but I thought I was getting rid of a lot of things. And then when I lived here, I did accumulate things, and then I would go home and bring more stuff back. And so my step to decluttering, my step to minimalism was small steps. And I had setbacks. You're always going to have setbacks, but I learned that that was okay. So there might be days that I don't feel like doing anything at all, and that's fine. One of the things that a Chinese philosopher, I like quotes, but this Chinese philosopher said, a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. And that's, if you're just beginning with decluttering, that's, it just takes small steps, baby steps, but it takes that first step. So you got to do that first step. And probably, like I said, maybe if you have a junk drawer, a catch-all, maybe for you that would be the easiest step to take, the easiest thing to declutter. Like I said, for me, it was not. But you just have to be patient with it, but be persistent and let it go.